Let's go ahead and get right into a conversation I had with City Water, Light, and Power's Doug Brown. Chatted with him yesterday before the final report came out on what happened with the coal ash release, and of course that took a lot of people's attention because anytime you see kind of a brownish gray smoke coming from the utility, it definitely is going to raise some eyebrows. But the reason I connected with Doug Brown from CWLP yesterday was more to talk about the energy legislation that passed the Illinois Senate in the early morning hours. So here's some of the conversation I had with Doug. And I started off by asking him for the reaction to the latest of what he's seen from CWLP and their perspective when it comes to the Senate's energy package that would really impact all sectors of the state's economy when it comes to energy. So here's Doug Brown from CWLP reacting to the latest out of the Illinois Senate.
To some of the amendments that were pushed forward by the Senate leaders. Basically that gives 2045 as a hard end date for all fossil fuels in the state. So that it does apply to CWLP. So our coal-fired units, our peaking units would all have to retire in 2045. There are other, items in there that have for investor-owned utilities basically to shut down sooner for their coal-fired units. But with our units, though, they're going to be able to run until 2045. But with that, even if we have carbon capture installed, 2045 is still a hard end date that basically you can't operate after that date.
What would the impacts be on any outstanding bonds?
Well, our bonds are paid off in 2040. So essentially, from 2040 to 2045, we would be able to transition to other resources as we close Unit 4.
So the bonds wouldn't necessarily be up, he says. They have bonds that would be paid off for Unit 4 before the hard close date of 2045 for municipally owned power generation stations. So, Doug, I also asked him about some of the other issues around the energy package, especially when it comes to how long CWLP expects to have Dahlman for. So if there's a hard shutdown date of 2045, is the lifespan of Dahlman 4 able to go beyond that? Again, here's Doug Brown from CWLP.
It's kind of hard to say exactly what that would be. If it's 2050, is it 2060? A little bit further out. It's not a forever date, but it's definitely going to be shortened for its lifespan. With the 2045 date, but at least, our bonds are paid for, so it provides less of an impact to our customers. Here's the thing, Greg, COP, we're wanting responsible legislation, right, for downstate and to have a reliable, resilient electric grid that's affordable, but also protective of the environment. So that's kind of what we're after. And we're hoping that, basically, implementing like greenhouse gas caps on each unit that would shut them down more prematurely, wouldn't happen before we can really get other resources in place. We think it's a very bad idea to affect reliability like that. And all we're asking for is something that works for kind of all the parties together and trying to reach the end goal of that 2045 date.
So, Doug Brown with CWLP reacting to some of what has come out of the Illinois Senate, but you do have the Senate kicking the bill over to the House, and how the House takes that up, still unclear. A message I got from the Illinois House Speaker's office said that the Speaker's not willing to call a bill unless there's consensus among the Democratic caucus and various constituencies. And you really do have kind of this butting of heads of environmentalists and labor groups. The labor groups want to ensure that there are jobs, not just up until 2045, but also after that, whenever you have what the goal is to have renewable energy as the main go-to. But you have this ongoing playing out, and some big questions still remain, including all about renewables. And how exactly that's going to play out on energy reliability, the grid, and so on.
I think you see, a real focus on renewables, that wind and solar, along with batteries, are going to be the answer. And unfortunately, there's a lot of issues that come with those resources. I mean, they're not carbon free, to manufacture those and to dispose of those items once they've reached their life into life. Um, there's other issues or not issues, but other resources like burning hydrogen fuel in gas turbines. So that's an option too that eventually is going to come along, I think, but it needs time to develop. Um, Carbon capture, I think, is still a viable technology that needs to be pursued. And I think over time, you're going to see too, as a transition starts occurring, the need for baseload generation and having more options available is going to kind of rise to the forefront. And then the whole all these issues will have to be revisited again. So I think by allowing that 2045 date to be out there a little bit farther out, it allows all those things to kind of take place. So that way we don't put ourselves in a position where we actually jeopardize the electric grid and the citizens of Illinois.
Again, I'm sharing with you a conversation I had with Doug Brown yesterday here on the WMAY morning news feed at 646. I'm Greg Bishop, and we're reacting to some of the hearing reaction to some of the policies that the legislature is putting together to have sweeping energy policy for the state of Illinois. And one of those things is focusing on renewables. And we'll hear a little bit later on some reaction from senators on the floor of the Senate this week that talked about how there used to be a conversation about clean energy, and it used to be a focus. We need clean energy, but then the focus seems to have changed over the years from clean energy to renewable energy. And there's obviously a different type of narrative there because clean energy could be, for instance, like coal. Rather, nuclear. Nuclear is considered a clean energy by some people. So the focus is to prop up nuclear to ensure that we have sustainable, long-term green energy with nuclear versus renewable energy, which would be the likes of solar or wind. All of this being considered while they're also targeting coal to shut down, and CWLP having a coal-fired power plant municipally owned would be impacted by that. But there's also a move with this renewable energy push to have more electric vehicles on the roadways, and what that would mean for the current baseload capacity still up in the air. Even though we do have a fair amount of electric vehicles right now on the roads, Doug Brown doesn't see yet the direct impacts on CWLP, but acknowledges that there could be impacts if there are more electric vehicles on the roadways.
We haven't really seen a big growth with that, but I think we're definitely on board with trying to generate electrification of transportation, and I think putting chargers around the city of Springfield, that's something that we're going to be looking into, to try to help with that, push that forward. But it does increase our load. There's no doubt about it. It shifts that load to the electric grid, and we're going to have to cover that. So in order to do that, we will need generation, and that's something that you don't know exactly how much it's going to grow yet, because they're going to pump a lot of funding, even from a federal level and state level, into the EV market. So it's hard to figure out what the real impact is going to be at this point, but we know it's going to increase, and we're going to have additional generation available. One of the other things too that's available is in the bill is essentially you can have units that are 25 megawatts or less that are not impacted by this legislation. So with that, we would be able to have some peaking units that we would place. So like interstate gas turbine, it's basically 130 megawatts. So we would need multiple units to replace that unit, which is actually be less efficient and more costly, but that's kind of the way the playing field is set right now. So, that's something that we would be looking at in the future as we transition to that 2045 date.
Sharing a conversation I had with Doug Brown yesterday here on the WMAY morning news feed, connected with Doug off air to get his reaction to some of the policies that are surfacing in the bill that the Senate passed this week after a special session. And that measure still possibly up in the House. But while they were debating it at the State House earlier this week, you did have that ash plume from an ash release, coal ash being released from the utility. And the pictures alarmed people around the area worried about their health and a variety of other issues. And of course, the latest is that a valve was released when there was substance in there. It shouldn't have been. It's unfortunate, CWLP says, and they continue to look at their policies and procedures to make sure such a thing doesn't happen again. But I did ask Doug Brown from CWLP to react to those who may point to that ash release as another reason why public utilities that are coal-fired are dangerous and pollutants and need to be shut down sooner than later. And here's Doug's response.
Well, I mean, again, if the incident was a human error, that's not really an indication of that. Burning coal is a bad thing. What that means to me is that we need to have better training. Then at that point, we need to make sure that our employees are not making those decisions on their own, that they, run things past management, making sure that we have time to assess the situation to make sure that we account for all safety measures, those kinds of things. So that's the paramount thing. The other things, everything's a trade-off. Burning coal is definitely not the easiest thing to do. It's a very complicated process. There's no doubt about it. But so isn't mining rare earth minerals for solar panels and for wind turbines. And then what do you do with those things when it comes time for to retire those kinds of resources, and how do you dispose of them? So, there's all kinds of issues that arise out of these things, and I think it all has to be balanced with what's best for, customers, for rates, for how much it costs, for how it affects the environment. And I think, as the coal industry has done, in the last 20 years, is just we keep cleaning up the process, making things better. And then, have an event like that we had yesterday, it's very, very unfortunate. But again, through quick action, the employees were able to, keep it under control and keep it localized. So I think that's the critical thing. It's not that this fly ash went all over Springfield and all over the city. That's not the case.
So that's Doug Brown. Conversation I had with him yesterday off air about the energy package making its way through the State House, and also reaction to some who say the ash release earlier this week is an indication of why we need to shut down CWLP. But of course, it's an ongoing issue that we'll continue to track for you here on the WMAY morning news feed. All right, let's take a break for a brief moment here. Get you your forecasts. The high of 81, the low of 59, with increasing clouds